All right, everybody, welcome to ZenOne Podcast. This is going to be episode 99, and I want to welcome to my friends, Daniel Jimenez, if I said it correctly,
Yeah.
right, and Marvin Rodriguez. So I met you guys at Scott Luna's event. It was a lot of fun. I was sitting kind of like you guys are sitting this way, and I'm sitting this way, right? So I could pretty much see what you guys are doing. So not in a creepy way, I gotta say, right? So I'm just watching, I'm paying attention, and you guys are taking so many notes, and you're like talking between each other. And I think the coolest thing is three of you, like Ivan was there, right? So three of you just discussing among yourself what you learn and how you can implement between the two of the practice that you have. So I wanted to have you on primarily to talk about your experiences, not necessarily with Scott Luna's event, but we can touch on that. But major thing is running private practice. How does it feel? Like it's 2024, we're about to get into 2025. Do you fear of recessions? Do you fear of any economic downturns? Do you like any fears that you might have? So with that being said, welcome to the pod, and I'm excited to chat with you guys.
Awesome. Thanks for having us.
It'll be awesome.
This is exciting.
Yeah. So let's start. Like, where'd you guys start? How did this thing started that three of you are working together?
Yeah, I'll kick it off. So let's see. So my longtime, very close friend, Dr. Ivan Montijo, we've known each other since high school. He's a guy that's always wanted to be a dentist, just super high achiever, graduated dental school early. I think his undergrad in dental school took 7 years. Normally takes 8. So just a rock star. And we've been friends for a long time. And he owns multiple practices, and I'm not really affiliated with dentistry. Frankly, my background is operations. I worked in the defense industry as an engineer. My educational background is engineering, but I worked in the defense industry for 13 years. Then went to Amazon, worked for the tech giants at Amazon. I worked for AWS, so engineering, program management. But ultimately, the theme in my career has been operations, right? Just, how to take complicated procedures, scale it, making them to where they're simplified, they're streamlined, and you can scale them. I think my claim to fame, as I call it, was I launched the Whole Foods online grocery fulfillment when Amazon bought Whole Foods. So at one point, I had 6,000 employees in my region, 30 Whole Food stores across the Southeast. So my point is, operations, scalability, that sort of thing. After almost 7 years at Amazon, I don't know. I wouldn't call it a midlife crisis, but I just reached a point where I wasn't feeling fulfilled, and I wanted to do something different. I wanted to pivot, and so I approached Dr. Ivan Montijo, my long-term friend, and I said, "Hey, what if you and I were to team up?" And he's passionate about recruiting doctors, about mentoring doctors, and about the real estate side of dentistry and all of that. Whereas I'm operations, tactical, stream, HR, IT, marketing, all of that. And so we said, let's do this. He has aspirations to potentially form maybe a mini DSO, right? I think we kind of we talk about the future of 5-10 practices in the future. And so we said, let's do this, right? I'll do the operations. He'll do the the business side. It's from a recruiting standpoint, and then we'll go from there. So that's sort of our story. And then I'll kind of give a quick intro to Marvin. Marvin is someone that worked in the group that Dr. Montijo was a part owner of, and Marvin is just an absolute jack of all trades. Background: dental assisting, office manager, treatment coordinator, all of the different positions in dentistry that you have in an office. Marvin's done that. And so at one point, Dr. Montijo pulled me aside and said, "Hey, there's an opportunity for us to potentially bring Marvin on, kind of form like a 3-man team, the Three Amigos." And so that's quick intro for Marvin, but that's where we're at right now. We've got a great team and we're growing. And Marvin, I'll kick it over to you.
Yeah, I started. Thank you for all the kind words, by the way. I appreciate it. I started dentistry when I was about 15 years old. My mom made me get a job, kind of forced me into a private practice at a very young age, and I started literally at the bottom. I started cleaning baseboards. I worked with a lady who was OCD, polishing leaves. Have you ever polished leaves in your life? Yeah, don't want to do that.
Polishing leaves.
And I just worked my. It was it was definitely a working experience. I learned how to appreciate a lot of things very quickly. But then I literally, like he said, I did everything. I started as a 15-year-old, kind of like a stereotech. Then worked my way up to dental assistant. Became, wanted more money. Had my first kid. I was like, you know what? I need to keep moving up in life. Became an assistant office manager. Um, the reason I became important to a lot of people was because I was really good with insurance verification, insurance breakdowns, and insurance utilization. Probably one of the biggest downfalls in any dental practice is not utilizing insurance. I think people, all they think is 180/50, right? But there's so much more that goes into that. And then I got with Daniel and Yvonne. It's been about a year now. I like how they move. I like how they work. It's Daniel is, again, he's the numbers guy. He does the Excel spreadsheets. He takes what I say and puts it into like a tangible item, I guess you could say. I'm horrible with that stuff, but I can talk to you about it all day. And then after I just kept doing that. I think that this opportunity that was given to me, it was a great opportunity. I worked with a doctor. We did $5.5 million in a year, and it was all strictly insurance based. Literally, we were a very high Medicare patient base. I would say about 90% of the patient base was that. And we made it work. So when people say, it doesn't work, or you have to have fee for service and all that, I believe that we will get there at some point, but it's not absolutely needed.
Before we dive into insurance and before we dive into dentistry side of things, I want to go back for a second to Daniel. 70 years at Amazon. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
So now, what did that teach you?
Oh, goodness. Well, I'll tell you, I worked with the smartest people that I've ever come across. Every meeting I go to, these folks are just full of creativity and just amazing ideas. And I'll tell you, it's a quick side story. When I was at Lockheed Martin, in the defense industry, I was always the youngest guy in the room, right? Always the youngest. It's a very conservative, environment, ex-military, right? Very, very defense oriented. And I was always the youngest guy in the room. And I was there for 13 years. I really thought I'd be there forever. An amazing opportunity came up with Amazon. And then I went and flipped. Now I'm at Amazon. Now I'm the old guy. It's like, how did this happen? Amazon is run by a bunch of, and I say this jokingly, but everyone's in their 20s, right? I'm married. I've got kids. And it was sort of like, wait, you have to go take your kids to a doctor's appointment? Again, I'm saying it jokingly, but it's just a very intense, competitive environment. Amazon pays well, but they expect for you to earn that, right? And so, it was a great experience. I think what I learned there was Amazon. One of the things at Amazon that they were really big on is what they call two-way doors. And that's something that was very new for me, because at Lockheed, when you make a decision, they are not two-way door decisions. And what that means is you go through a door and you can turn around and come back to that. Doesn't work that way. And that's not just because of the company. It's obviously the nature of the business itself. At Amazon was so unique in that you could have an idea. For example, I'll give you a great example. When I joined Amazon, I was asked to lead the basically the Amazon version of Uber Eats, right? Like restaurant deliveries. Amazon wanted to get into that world, and so I was leading that the fulfillment of it was called what was it called? What did we call it back in the day? I don't even remember the name, but it didn't last long. But my point is, they threw it out there. I was running the East Coast of the United States. I think I had 20 cities that I was operating. And after 10 months, they said, yeah, didn't work out. All right, next idea, boom, to the curb. And it's really beautiful. It really is beautiful to work in an environment where they just throw things to the wall and see what sticks. So it was a really unique environment. I think Whole Foods was really exciting. I was going to stores all around the country. It was top secret. We called it Project Avocado because it had not been released yet. And so we were training people, and it's not hard, right? Grocery shopping, right? All you gotta do is grocery shop. But just like dentistry, right? All the steps and how are you navigating the store in the most streamlined way? And oh, wait a minute, the strawberries that we're picking are full of mold. How do we that sounds silly, but this was my life. This was my life for 4 years before I switched into AWS. And so I just think that the two-way doors mentality, I think, was really big. And then also scaling. I've never seen anything like it, guys. Just last thing I'll say about this. When we started the Whole Foods expansion, We had 12 stores in the United States that we were running grocery fulfillment out of. And by the end of maybe 18 months later, we had over 500 stores in the United States. I mean, come on, 12 to 500 stores, tens of millions of dollars of revenue. That's just, there's nothing I'd ever experienced before. So being a part of that, watching it grow and understanding what it took has definitely shaped my career and my ability to just understand operations and scalability and all that stuff.
Yeah. So then, just to stay on this for a little bit. So then, 7 years at Amazon, then you call Yvonne and you're like, all right, let's do it. 2 practices. I'm not going to underplay it, but just like, let's be real, right? Going from Amazon to 2 dental practices of like staff of what, 30 people altogether?
Yeah.
Like, you probably can do all your work in 2 hours, right? And then go play golf, right? Like, what are we even doing here?
That's what he thought.
Like,
That's what he thought.
That's right. That's right. And I mean, and Marvin hears me say this on a regular basis, right? When we talk about, spending a lot of time in the offices, I say, hey, I didn't give up my corporate gig and my fancy 401k and all that. I didn't give that up to be an office manager, right?
Yeah.
I gave that up because I see the vision. I see what Dr. Montijo brings to the table. I see what he brings to the table. And so I want us to be at 10 practices, right? I want to create processes that are repeatable, that are streamlined, and that are easily scalable. Easier said than done, right? I'll tell you the one thing that Marvin and I joke about a lot, and Tiger, I'm sure you'll appreciate this as well. At Amazon or at Lockheed for that matter, when as a leader, as a manager, if I told you to do something, you were my employee, it got done. I mean, that was just kind of, and if it didn't, well then discipline, written, final one, right out the door.
Yeah.
And it's not about my feelings. It's not, I don't like firing people, but it's a business. We're here to do a business. Yeah. That's the job. And then I got into dentistry and I was warned on day one by Dr. Montijo, Daniel, you need to understand, I know that you're used to this, but in dentistry, you're going to release a process. You're going to share it in the staff meeting. Everyone's going to get excited. We're going to say, oh my gosh, what a great idea. They're going to do it for 2 weeks. And then they're going to revert back to, and I said, no, that's not true. I'm a boss. I've had thousands of people working for me. I know what it is to set something in place. And if they're not compliant, there's consequences. And boy, was I wrong, because here we are 6 months after just buying our last practice. And I mean, just simple processes like when someone walks in the door, getting their treatment plan and the consents filled out and signed before they walk to the back. Very simple process. Like hold it, like, why is this not happening? So
yeah.
Anyway, I think that's been a bit of an adjustment, but we are putting that in place. And I will tell you, I gotta say, this is really important. We've hired a lot of people, and a lot of the people that we've hired, and Marvin included, come from DSOs. They come from the big dogs, right? Aspen, Coast, Pacific Dental. I mean, these are big DSOs, and they've come to us and they've said, "Wow, you guys are just a private practice, but like these processes, these steps, these checklists, these accountability measures, these mechanisms that you guys have put in place, this is big dog stuff. Like you guys are just a little private practice, but these are things. And like, did you know that? Did you come from corporate?" It's like, no, I didn't know that. But these are common sense things, right, Marvin? This is not like you and I are geniuses.
It seems
These
very
are
simple to do that.
Things that people should be held accountable for. So I'm proud of that. I'm proud that we've kind of gotten that feedback saying like, wow, you guys are next level. And so saying it's great, that's nice. But can we make that feedback grow? Can we take what we've done and grow and expand and all of that?
And so, make it repeatable is what it is. It's like, can you keep repeating that process and making it work, right?
Yeah. And I would say, just back to the first thing you said about the two-way door, I love that expression a lot. So we use that quite often, that it basically, for people that don't know, it implies to how do you make decisions, that most of the decisions in your life are one door decisions, meaning like getting married, like hopefully it's a one door decision that you're married, right? Or like having kids is certainly one door decision, but it's like there's so like few of them. And most of the decisions in life are two-way doors. So like, don't dwell on if you made the right decision or not. It's just like in and out, like quickly making those changes. Yep. So I really appreciate it. And so then Marvin, like now Daniel comes in and you're like this guy from Amazon. And I actually didn't know that. So, and I love this story because I talk to a lot of people and they say, well, boy, I wish we can bring somebody from Amazon to join our team. And they're like, that's never going to happen because Amazon is Amazon, or Whole Foods right now, part of Amazon. but it's just never going to happen in dentistry because we're mom and pop shops. Even some of the big DSOs, they're trying to attract these people, but it's always two things. They either can't attract the right person, or they attract the person who is kind of like the C-suite and or like a little bit below, like a VP level, and they're just into like, okay, who reports to me, who gets shit done, that kind of stuff, right? It's not about, all right, get your hands dirty, let's understand the process. So I really see these two things, like they either can't get somebody in. So Marvin, what is your thought like seeing Daniel come in with his Amazon experience to dentistry? Like, how does it feel like? How does it look like?
For me, so I've worked in the corporate world, right? And again, they say, I think Daniel and Yvonne have said that common sense isn't so common, right? I've worked
Yeah.
with people that have been RVPs for dental offices, district managers for dental offices, and like I will say that Daniel, being that he's only been here for what, a year? How long have you been? You've been with
Yeah, about a
for
year
a
and a
year,
half or
right?
so. Yeah.
He's grasped more information and has learned more about dentistry in 1 year than I've worked with VPs, district managers from and again, big corporations. I've worked for everybody, man. I've worked for every corporation you can think of, um, so and the fact that he can make it tangible and put it out there and like show me like the physical numbers and do it very quickly and very efficiently makes a big difference, because I like people need to see this. I'm a visual person. I like to see the numbers. I would ask, I would ask my VPs who've been in dentistry for 8 years about the profit margin, right? Oh man, I got to go ask this person over here real quick, and then I got to send an email to this person and receive an email, which is insane. Like for me, if you're the RV, that should be readily available, right? Like you should be able to
Yeah.
do this. This is your job, right? You shouldn't have to ask Joe Schmo in the corporate office how to do this, and also like it is, how could I say, it is, it's nice to have somebody who is new and has an understanding, because Daniel is not set in his ways, and he's very, for being somebody who again worked at Lockheed Martin, right? I thought he would have had so much pride that like, hey, what I know is what I know, and that's it, right? He's not like that at all. The guy, like you teach him stuff, he actually researches things himself. Like he will actually take the time and effort to not only do what he has to do, but also learn the background information and why we do the things that we do, and which is nice as like, I'm not a clinician per se, but I would be more on the clinician aspect of the dentistry, right? Like, going over treatment plans, diagnosing things. And, I remember I told Daniel, like I showed him some x-rays of like what SRPs look like, what it looks like to have diagnosed an SRP. And he went down the rabbit hole, and then he starts calling me back saying, oh, did you know that, 60% of the population should have a perio, and I'm like, actually, no, I never looked into that, but I kind of figured that, so it's nice to have somebody. And I don't know if that's an Amazon thing. I don't know if that's a lot. I think that's just, in my opinion, I think that's just a Daniel thing. I think Daniel, whatever he does, he's going to dive in. But it is good having that Amazon mentality, like I really, and it also Daniel's fun to work with. And I think part of that might have been because of the
We have a good
Amazon
time,
stuff,
that's for
what I mean?
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a good time, like, so when in the corporate world, when you have, again, these people think that they think they know it all, you can't change their mind. That's why I left the corporate world, was because I would feed these people a ton of knowledge, and they saw it as a threat, where I can tell Daniel whatever I want, and he doesn't see it as a threat. He sees it as, hey, I'm learning something. And then again, he
Yeah.
take it to the next level and just install it into everyday practice, which
Yeah.
is nice. Because I'm not like that at all. I'm going to be honest with you.
I
talk
saw
about
that
it,
at
like
the
I said.
event. Like at first, I thought all three of you are doctors.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
It's just how you guys roll. Like I really thought three of you are doctors. Maybe you have a 3-practice group and
Yeah.
you each run a practice, and here
Yeah.
we go. Like, right. So it's
And
pretty cool.
I'm going to be honest, since you say that, is like, as a dentist, people think that you become a dentist and you start a private practice and it's very easy. Like, it's not. Like you need a good team around you to do these things. Like imagine having to wake up every day as a dentist and be the guy who does the books, who has to do the P&Ls, who has to go over the clinical aspect. I mean, that's a lot of work. Like for you to have a successful practice, you need, I mean, not to say this, but you need people like me and Daniel. You have to have a good support team.
And Tiger, I'm sure you see this on a regular basis, but that's shocking to me, right? It's shocking to me. Like I'm so busy. I'm so crazy busy. I can't imagine doing my job and then being a doctor. Like, and
Yeah,
you're working on teeth all day. I just don't truly. It's really. I mean, I'd love to learn more from you. I'm sure you can give tell us some stories, and Marvin as well. But to me, it's
yeah.
just. I mean, I'm working, and maybe it's because we're doing a lot more. I don't know. But I mean, honestly, Tiger, I'm working until past midnight, multiple days a week. And it's not for fun. I mean, I've got kids, right? I mean, it's because the credentialing stuff and making sure that the reports are right, and that all the marketing stuff and the switchboards for our phone lines, and that they're like
That's
all
the
of
new
that
thing.
stuff that's critical, right? Like how in the world is it that doctors are outsourcing all of this? Well, then, I mean, but then the profit margins are super low, right?
Exactly. And that's where it becomes, that's where a lot of people fail. In my opinion, like I've worked at a couple private practices too, and a lot of them can't pay the bills. They have a hard time paying their staff. They're taking out loans upon loans, and that's why. It's because they are literally trying to manage everything. I mean, the office that we bought in Tavares that I started, that was what happened to her. Like, she just got overwhelmed. Was just not able to keep up with the demand of credentialing, and then would lose her contract. So then the next year doesn't realize she's out of network. I mean, these are things that, again, it's very, very overwhelming. Like and Daniel, like Daniel says, you're up to 11, 12 o'clock at night. I am, I have kids and all that. I'm always constantly thinking about things to make life easier. Like all day, every day. Like, I'll be on a Saturday driving my car, and then, like, I just, boom, an idea hits me, and then I'll talk to Daniel about it on Monday. However it comes. A light bulb.
You wait till Monday. You don't call him right away.
Now, sometimes I do. Sometimes I text him, but I know Daniel. Like I said, I know Daniel. Daniel's always working, man. There's not, people think because he sits in the office that he's just twirling his finger. No, I know he's constantly doing something, man. Like, this guy's on the phone all day. Or we're in meetings, or he's doing a FaceTime call. It's always something. Me, I deal with the people in the office, and that's what Daniel's trying to pull me away from. He's like, dude, like, I understand, and that's where I thrive. Like, I thrive.
Right, that's your comfort.
Involved. Yeah, but I have to get away. I have to pull away from that, because it's not it's not going to do anything for anybody if I stay that way.
Guys, I have so much to unpack here. So first of all, talking about both of you staying up late and working late. You have two practices, right?
Yeah.
And I think when you say, how can you be successful if you don't do that? And I think the first thing is the definition of success for everybody is different.
Yeah.
So
100%.
For example, your definition of success is, especially with Amazon, and Marvin, with your experience working at the DSOs, your definition of success is very different from somebody I actually can think of that has an office somewhere in Tennessee. He works or she works Monday through Thursday, 7 till 3. They've got a great quality of life. They have something, automated, something not. They see a lot of patients for their own schedule, and they're happy with where they're at. So it is what it is. And luckily, dentistry still, till this day, allows people to do that. You can have the student loan, you can have the loan for the practice, and you can still afford a good life. If you do things right? So and if that's your definition of success. But I do agree with you. I think and I think the second issue from that is people are not honest with themselves. So I think it takes a little bit of time to get to like your 40s, I think, is when you're like, you know what, I'm going to stop bullshitting myself, and I'll be honest and say, this is what I actually want in life. And I think in the 20s and 30s, especially being doctors in type A, people like, no, I want the amount of people I met who wanted to have 400 location DSOs is insane.
No, yeah.
Right? Yeah. Insane.
It sounds good. It sounds great. It was
right? Oh, dude, just watch me do it. And I'm watching and it's like 2, 3, 5 sold. And what happened? Right? So and I'm not judging. It's just life, your desires, your perspective, everything changes. And I think to the second point is if people start being honest to themselves earlier to say, no, this is what I want. And actually, maybe I just want to be an associate, and that's totally fine too, right? Absolutely. So don't burn yourself. Don't become a owner if you don't want to. But I feel
I know associates that make more money than owners.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I personally know associates that make more money than owners.
And you don't have to deal with all the rest of the stuff, right?
Exactly.
But if you want that life, if you want to create that life, it's still available. Like people poo-poo on the private practice ownership. No, it's thriving. Just keep doing it, right? Yeah. But I also think that if people are honest and they say, I want to build 10 location group. Like, the first thing is you need a team, like you said, right? So like you have to understand as a dentist, you're not going to do it by yourself.
No way.
You've got to attract people. And so, and I think these are my 3 observations. I'm just curious what you guys think.
Absolutely. I think it's a no-brainer. There's no way that you're going to have that kind of success. Again, how you define success. If how you define success is getting to 10 practices, I think we've learned, I would say, and some of it has been hard to learn, but we've learned that you got to have strong people. I think that, and I don't want to necessarily stereotype, but I don't know. I mean, the practices that we've been involved in so far, Marvin, right? These are practices that they've been there. They've been in dentistry for 30 years, right? Some of the staff, and there's complacency and there's comfort. And listen, I love for people to get to a place where they're streamlined, they're comfortable. I love that. But if you're doing things the wrong way, or you're not doing things that in the most efficient way, well, there's going to be changes made. Okay, well then now we just introduce change. Nobody likes change, right?
Yeah.
So I think that one thing that I've learned, not in dentistry, but just in general in life, right, is find strong people and then figure out where they go afterwards. I think maybe it was Malcolm Gladwell that said something like that. That was like, finding top talent is way more important than having a position for them to fill, right? I think we put the cart before the horse sometimes, right? And so I think that's something, right? Finding top talent. We found an office manager recently at one of our practices, and she's a rock star. And so, how can we make her, like Marvin and I, we're already talking about, okay, when we get to the 3rd practice, which by the way, Tiger, we're actually going to go visit a practice tomorrow. I don't want to get our hopes up, but we're pretty excited about potentially another practice.
Let's do it.
But anyway, but if we're already thinking about this office manager, how can we utilize her to where she's not just managing one office, right? How can we maybe make her maybe regional or something, right? So anyway, I think that's really the key. And then I love what you said about defining success. You're right. I mean, we've got a guy at one of our practices that's on track to make, $400,000 a year. That's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. Yeah. He's an associate. He's just an associate. He's bread and butter dentistry. He's not sprinting through the halls. He's not sprinting through the halls and pulling out teeth. No. This guy, he does the work. He gets it done. Bread and butter dentistry. He's making $400,000 take home. It's a lot of money.
He doesn't need to learn P&Ls. Fire and fire.
He doesn't have to worry about any of that. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. So, I think it's what you said was really valuable in terms of what does success mean to you? What are your desires? And then being realistic with yourself, right? Like, I mean, at this point, I don't know, man. Maybe things will change as we start to scale. And right now we're still kind of in this growth phase. But in my mind, I'm like, 5 practices sounds great. Maybe we'll max out at 5. Right? I would love to say 10, but we're working so much right now that it's a bit difficult for me to imagine what life would be like with 10 practices. But again, maybe we bring in some third party things. Maybe we get a call center. Who knows? But I'll tell you what. This is kind of, I guess, a bit of a quick side tangent. One of the things that I've been really excited about in dentistry is the resources. There are so many podcasts and YouTube videos and books, and I've become an absolute student of the industry. Just because there are people that have done this. What Marvin and I are trying to do, and Dr. Montiel, what we're trying to do, guys have done this. I've got a book in my office right now that is the guys from Orlando, Florida, and they did this. It was a doctor and an MBA. Right. And they now have 13 practices. Right. So I love that. The worlds that I come from don't really have like all these resources available to you. So I'm really loving that. And Scott Luna, he's now on, was it Shared Practices? Right. That's a phenomenal podcast as well. And so, there's just so many resources for us to not have to reinvent the wheel, not have to figure things out on our own. Right. We can take these lessons learned and then hopefully implement them and be successful as well.
Yeah.
Well said.
For me, I think success for me would be just learning from other people's mistakes. I've seen, corporate, Greenberg, Coast, I saw their numbers. They mistakenly gave me access one time on their web portal to all their numbers in the offices. And you'd be surprised how out of 250 offices, to be honest, it might be 50 offices keeping those places alive. Had it not been for your 50 offices doing $4 million in these amazing locations, Coastal would not exist, right? So it's like, I think that success for me and what would be successful is, if you can run 5 practices and they're making you $1 million each, and then you add another one and you make another $1 million and you keep going, I think that's great. I think it's possible. I think anybody, I wouldn't say anybody can do it, but I think it's very possible to do. I've seen too many people bite off more than they can chew, and I always go back to Tavares because that was a very productive office. Guy, that office is doing 5 point something million dollars, probably could have never worked again. He was taken home because he's very frugal, penny pincher, managed, the budget very tightly, probably bringing home $2 million a year, jumps into another practice in a not so good location, is still working 5 days a week because he can't find a dentist to come work there because they don't want to work on the patient base there. It's had a very hard time with that. Um, I guess the point is that at the end of the day, success to me is not, like I said, you could have 100 practices, man. But if only 2 of them or 3 of them are doing good or 40 of them are doing good, then why have the 100 practices, right? Like at that point, just let it go. Like just worry about the 40 practices that you have that are making you money. Success is not based on how many practices you own by any means, right? Like we all know that, you can have 200 practices and be losing money every year. I mean, again, Coast, I worked with them. They lost a ton of money when the recession hit and all that. I mean, they went bankrupt. They sold their lab. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this on a podcast. I guess I can. I don't work for them, but they went and sold their lab. They had a bunch of offices in California they had to sell, because they bit off more than they could chew, I think what me and Daniel have going right now, I think we're doing a great job. I think that I would be happy if we had 5 practices, with that. And of course, if we could go to 10, that would be amazing. I mean, that would be like a bucket, scratch it off my bucket list thing. But I think 5 practices would be great. I mean, look at Scott Luna, right? I mean, that guy has bought and sold practices, right? But if you really paid attention to his mastery class, he's talking about 1 practice. He's not talking about 10, 11, 12, like I've seen, like, again, in my region alone, when I was in Coast, we probably had 2 out of 12 offices that were doing good. And those 2 offices literally kept that whole region alive. Like they were funneling money from our offices to pay employees in entirely different offices,
Yeah.
And I think that's what happens to a lot of these guys. And that's why they say, you know what, I have to sell it. I can't manage it, or they're just losing money. You're taking out loan upon loan, borderline bankrupt thing,
And Tiger, one quick thing to inject that I think is important that I want to make sure that is clear here. We've hired a lot of people in the last year, and the majority of them come from DSOs. And I'm assuming this is not a unique situation, but most of them have pretty negative things to say about their experiences. Just quality of care. One DSO here in town doesn't even have a doctor. Their doctor left. They haven't been able to replace the doctor, so all they have is a hygienist on staff. And for any work that needs to get done, they refer it out. Like, this is crazy, right? So my point of telling you that is that I want to walk that line. I want to walk the line where you walk into our office, a big one. I'm actually on my way there now, right after this. It looks like a ski cabin, right? You walk in, the lobby has a fireplace and there's wooden carved bears. It's really beautiful.
In Florida.
Right?
In Florida. Yeah.
It's like you guys in Utah or Montana.
Yeah.
But
that's how you feel when you walk in the place.
Yeah. I want that to be the feeling. I want it to feel private. I don't want it to be like, for example, on day one, when we bought this last practice 6 months ago, I walked in, I'm giving my sales pitch, I'm introducing myself. Everyone's like, oh, here we go. We got this corporate guy. This is just going to be another. And it's like, no, yes, I am a corporate guy. Yes, I'm a numbers guy. Yes, I love running data. But at the end of the day, I want for people to have that family private practice experience. And so if we have 5 or 10, that's the goal. That's a big measure of success for us, is how do we make it feel like each one is individual, each one is unique. Yes, they all have the same employee manual. Yes, they all have the same processes. Yes, they all have the same checklists, right? But it's unique, and I think that's a big goal of mine, because I just can't believe that every single person that we hire is like, never again, never again, never. And it's just like, that's I don't want anyone to say that about any of our practices.
It becomes almost robotic when you walk into, like, these corporations. You walk in and it's a corporation. Like, you just know when you walk in. You see the same signs in every building. You see, like, I mean, it just, again, I in the corporate world, that's how it is. Like, every office looks exact. And that's another big issue, is like, not every place is the same. Like, our Vineland location is not. You can't run this. I mean, can we have the handbooks? Yeah, but you can't run the Vineland location exactly the same as the Berry location. Two very different demographics.
That's a great point.
Yeah, we have Valencia College right next to us. The Berry is an older community, smaller town. Like, these people all know each other. They're all on Facebook writing each other as soon as we bought the practice. Like, they were like, oh, can you believe that the doctors are gone now? Like, two very different locations, and you have to be able to deal with that, and give the offices that a little bit of that freedom, you know what I mean? Because once you
Yeah,
take away that
totally.
freedom, then you destroy the practice. I mean, and I know because I've done this again, corporate. Like I would walk into one office and I'm like, you can't upcharge people in this office $1,000. This is not that patient base. And then you go down to Tampa. I forget the name of the real fancy place over there. I can't start with a W. Anyways, that place,
That's okay.
you can charge people $1,500, $2,000 extra, and they pay it, no hesitation. It's like, and they want you to run both practices like that, and then you wonder why this office is failing. Yeah, because you're trying to charge everybody $2,000 when they walk through the door.
Yeah.
You just can't do that. They are individual practices, and you should treat them as such. Now if you had two practices right next to each other, which would be dumb, which people do again, corporate offices all the time, though. Those you can treat the same, right? But in the real world, and even if it's corporate or not, you're not going to run buying them like the berry the same way. If you look at Walmart in one part of a neighborhood and you look at Walmart in another part of the neighborhood, their prices are different. Like people don't
Yeah, they
realize
carry different products too.
exactly. And some stuff is
Marvin.
locked in boxes where they went and locked in boxes over there.
Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah.
Marvin, one thing I want to ask you. So the practice where you worked at that was 5.5 mil was
Yeah.
doing really well. The doctor's taking 2 mil home. Why did he open the second office?
And that goes back to what you're saying, like, his success, he defines success as having multiple practices, right? So, and he thought, and not to say that his second practice is not profitable, right? But you can't open up a second practice and complain about working so damn much if you decided to open up a second practice. You know what I mean? Like
with one office taking 2 mil home, like you enjoy life, you're good.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And you could stop working, right? But that was his measure of success. And maybe because he wants to be like other people is, I want to have 10 practices. And I'm like, well, you're losing your mind with two. Like it's not, and he doesn't have a supporting team. He doesn't have people like me and Daniel, like he just doesn't have it, and it's like, to me, and I said the same thing. I said, dude, like we're doing great. Like we could take this, we should as a matter of fact, we should expand and buy the building next to us and make it a bigger office.
That's exactly right.
That would have been a smarter thing, right? Again, nobody listens to me, right? Actually, people listen, but he didn't want to listen, and that's why he is.
Nobody listened to you. Now they do.
Yeah. Now now he's and he's complaining about how hard he works, and it's like, well, you kind of did it to yourself, man. You did, and that's his measure of success was owning 2, 3, 4, 5 practices, but he does not have a team to support him. He does not.
Yeah.
So it becomes very difficult.
I'm curious, have you guys thought about, like, let's for a second think about 10 years down the road. And you have 5 practices, 7, right? So what if you land somewhere in the middle, right? Between 5 and 10, like 7, 8.
Yeah.
Things are good. And then private equity comes in and they're like, boys, you've done something tremendous here. We will give you 5x or like 7x or 14x, whatever they give you. What would make you to say no?
That's a tough one.
Like if somebody comes and buys the office, is essentially what you're saying?
Like the whole thing.
For me, my measure of success is retiring by the age of 45, which is probably not going to happen anytime soon. And being able to take care of my kids. I personally, if I could walk away a millionaire, I would walk away and enjoy my life. And maybe buy another small practice, right? Just one that kind of just makes a little bit of residual income, not because I want to, not because I need it, but just because I would want it, keep myself busy. Me personally, that's how I am. I would assume that Yvonne and Daniel might be a little different. I don't want to speak for Daniel. Yvonne does not seem like that type of guy. I think Yvonne would just keep working, I think he'd be like, no, I like this,
Yeah.
But you have to also think, man, there's a fear, like, nothing lasts forever. I have that mindset, like nothing lasts forever. Like, at what point do these offices tap out? And you're like, I don't know. If I see the light at the end of the tunnel, I'm reaching for that light. So, that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah. Daniel, what do you think?
Well, first of all, there's a big difference between 5x and 14x. That you mentioned those two numbers. I was like, well, those are two different.
Yeah.
But I'll be honest with you, it's not something that I've really thought a lot about. And your question's a good one. Like, what would it take to say no? Gosh, I've heard, some of the books that I've read and some of the podcasts that I've listened to and stuff say that the terms are typically not great for people like Marvin and I. For the doctor, yeah, maybe the doctor stay on, right? Whatever. But like, there's always been the joke that like, if there's like a COO, like my kind of position, they're the first to get fired, right? It's like, okay, so like, am I okay with that, right? Is the sum of money is that something I'm okay with? But to be very honest with you, Tiger, I don't think either of us have a great answer. We're so right now in a growth phase that's just is that sort of the dream. Hopefully, we get to a point where we've built a reputation and a product that is gaining.
They just buy us.
There's a lot of interest that's kind of churning, right? I would love that idea, but that's just so far away from us right now that I don't think but I say we've got, my goal is 10 years. I just turned 40 last week. I hit the big 40. And so in my mind, I've got this like 50, like in 10 years from now, like what does that look like? And so we shall see. Ask us again in 5 years. We'll see what that answer is.
I will.
We'll see what that answer looks like.
If I'm still in dentistry, I'll ask you.
Deal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that is a great question though, man. Like right now though, yeah, you couldn't offer me anything to buy any of these. If I own them, let's say I own them, you couldn't offer me anything to buy these practices because of the growth potential is insane.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not going to be able to offer. They're going to grow too.
Well, it's really interesting, Daniel. You mentioned the podcasts and books, and I think now we have a lot more information about private equity.
Yeah.
Just like DSOs, I don't want to say all private equities are bad. The same thing as DSOs, right? There are some DSOs that are doing incredible work, and
absolutely,
I think there's room for all. Like we need DSOs in some of the areas as well. It's not a but, I think it's and. At the same time, you hear that the saying that it's pretty funny is like private equity ruins everything, right? So like look at what happens to the TGIFs, right? The private equity bought it. It was a great cash flow business. Now they're shutting down. Like that's it. You don't have TGIFs anymore. They're gone, right? Or they will be gone soon. And it's like you hear these stories, like it's just like, and I have one of my buddies, I don't want to say the name, like he's been in dentistry, pediatric dentist, and he's done 2 or 3. I mean, he was on a podcast actually. And he talks about the same thing, like the private equity buys them and like they had a specific model. They were making so much money. It was insane, right? So 26 locations, they were doing really, really well. Like corporate structure, everything is good. He set up everything. Till the last day, he was still driving Honda Civic, right? So like he's the kind of guy, like, and but like as a friend, he's an incredible guy, incredible friend. And then he just keeps telling the stories, like how private equity bought it. Then they fired him as a CEO. They brought a CEO, like, and all that stuff. And they changed the model. And now we're going to do high end, which they were never designed for. And it just like, boom, ruined. Right. Yeah. So like you hear all these stories and sometimes I'm thinking like, man, what if you just build a great business and somehow you find a way to keep it going without selling to private equity? Like if it's a cash cow, right? It brings the money, it pays for your life, and it hopefully helps you to set aside some money as well. Like, can you make it where it's just going to continue going, even if you don't get, even if you don't involve like on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, that's the dream.
That's the dream. That's the dream. Yeah, we were actually just talking about that this morning. We're like, the goal is that we're just popping in maybe once or twice a week. These things are like running smooth. Yeah. And I'll be honest, in that world, if things were that perfect, and I think that if we could run 5 locations and they're all making, profit margin of $1.5-2 million each. I mean that, and it was consistently doing that with very minimal work for me. Then yeah, I would probably stay and continue to do that for 10, 20, 30 years.
Marvin, promise me one thing, please.
Yeah.
Right. The one thing that drives me nuts the most, like there are actually 2 things, but one, the biggest one is as soon as some of the people like in the corporate level or the doctors, I've seen doctors do it, not the corporate, but like as soon as people smell a little bit of money, they buy expensive cars and they start driving those expensive cars to the, I'm sure you've seen it. I've seen some doctors park Bentleys in front of the door. Like you literally open the door and the Bentley's parked right there. And then they bitch about $8 an hour. That was a while back when I was building dental offices. He was bitching about $8 an hour dental assistant or $10 an hour dental assistant.
Yeah. Yes,
like,
exactly.
Have a decency to like have a Camry in the garage to drive it to the office.
Yeah.
So that's
I would never be that person.
Yeah, we've actually, Marvin and I both said this to everyone at each practice. We've said there will not be a circumstance that these practices are really successful that everyone here doesn't benefit from that. I mean, we say that, and I know it sounds cliche, it sounds nice, but no, I think we really mean it. Like, we understand. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, like when I say that, and Daniel means it 100% too. I mean it because I came from that world. I started at the bottom end. Like there was nothing more frustrating than me stepping into an office and they get 30, 40% production, and you don't see any of that. And then you ask them for a dollar raise, and dollar raise for me when I'm in my early 20s, I mean, that was a big deal for me. I'm like, hey, but I was also paying attention to the numbers, and I'm like, hey, man, I'm making you money. I've paid my salary for the entire year in the first month I've been here, just in collections. And there's nothing more demeaning and demoralizing than somebody looking at you and saying, oh, well, you're 5 minutes late every day. And you're like, are you kidding me right now? Like, that it's, so I would never do that to anybody, man. If practice is doing $10 million, like, how can you look somebody in the eyes and be like, hey, yeah, you're only worth $18. These offices don't run without the people in the office. You know what I mean? Like they're just as important as we are, if not more important, because we can walk away. If we train them properly, we can walk away and they're doing our job for us. So how can you look at somebody and say, hey, we're not going to pay you? That to me is, and that's corporate, right? Like that's the corporate world, to be honest. That's everybody has a number, and for me, that's, again, I can talk about that forever because I'm very, I take it very personal, I guess you could say.
The corporate. Yeah. Daniel, what's your read on all this like conversation? Like you probably haven't heard a year ago. If I ask you what the DSO is, you probably wouldn't know, right?
No.
And so in 12 months now, you know the industry, you know what's going on. Like what, I guess my question as an outsider, like what surprises you the most and what opportunities do you see for private practices? Like, again, having your corporate experience.
Yeah. I think that my experience has shown that I know it's cliche to say it. Oh, nobody likes change. But boy, oh boy, do they not like change in dentistry. I mean, my goodness, I come from Amazon where like you'd be 90% of the way to your goal. You've been working on it for months. And then you get a call saying, pivot and turn that way. And you drop everything and you turn that way and you don't say a word about it. Right.
Yeah. No hesitation.
And dentistry is just, I mean, Open Dental, we use Open Dental. We like Open Dental as a PMS, but Open Dental is 30 years old, right? I mean, I guess what I'm getting at.
It looks like 30 years old too.
Is that the industry is yearning for modernization, right? And so let me get a quick example. I'll give a quick pitch for what I just started doing recently. When I got into dentistry, I noticed right away that every year when the fee schedules come out for a new insurance company, that people were manually typing in the fees for every single procedure code across every single insurance company. And I'm like, no, okay, she obviously doesn't know how to use a computer. Like, I mean, no. I asked around. I've been to conferences. I was on phone calls with practices around the country. Everyone says, no, Daniel, that's the way it's always been done. So I started a little side company where basically it's a software that simply takes the fee schedules from the insurance company in 10 seconds, changes the format so that you can auto upload the fees into your PMS. Now, this is not about me. I'm just saying, like, that is an example of like opportunities that we should be driving standardization, automation, right? And I won't give too much information on this because it's coming soon. But Marvin and I have been working with a team of really, really smart software engineers, developers that have very, very impressive resumes, that they understand what I just said to you. They understand this opportunity. And so they want to come in and they want to really shake up the PMS world with AI, automation, all of the outsource. We use a VoIP system for our phones. We have an insurance verification system that we all these outsourced things that we use to run our business. There's a company, and I know Curve is pretty great, right? Curve is kind of like, what do they call it at the conference? They called it the Tesla or the iPhone of PMSs. Well, there's someone coming. There's a wave that's coming that's looking to really shake things up and drive dentistry into the 21st and 22nd century, right? And so that's kind of I think that answers your question. Is just that is what I've been most surprised by, is just some of these common sense things. Like Marvin said, sometimes common sense is not so common, right? And so I think that's what it's exciting though, right? One way could be like, oh my gosh, this is so frustrating. But for me, it's exciting, right? I'm a data guy. I love data. I love Excel. And so I'll wrap up I'll write a query, right, in PMS, and I'll show some charts, and I show it to Marvin and the team. They're just like, I've never seen, I didn't know you could do that. It's just like, this took me 30 seconds. You know what I mean? It's so basic,
Yeah.
but it's a good
That's
thing.
what he's introduced.
Good thing,
That's
right?
what
I
he's
love
introduced
that.
for
I
sure.
love that I can add value. Like you said, I'm the new guy. Who am I? I'm the new guy. But I love that I can come into this business that I know nothing about, and I can add value immediately using my background in data and analysis. And I love, Marvin, I'm sure Marvin appreciates this. I love that now we can make decisions based on the data, right? It's not just about, oh, I
Yeah.
think it should be. No. The data says this. So as a result, moving forward, this is the conclusion that we've drawn. This is how we're going to move forward. And I love that. It's exciting. It gets me, when I come up with an Excel sheet or whatever, and I show Marvin,
Yeah.
that gets me going. I really enjoy that part of the job.
That's so cool. Guys, to start wrapping it up, I want to go back to Marvin, what you mentioned, that you don't have to be fee for service to have a successful practice.
Not at all.
Can you elaborate?
I'm actually honestly, I'm kind of against fee for service because of things like recessions and stuff, right? Like, I'm not 100% against it, but I just, so what, like, I'm big on Medicare. I love Medicare, and a lot of people would frown upon that. They're like, oh, you're crazy. Medicare is horrible. I love Medicare for two reasons. One, it is, they pay 100% as long as you have the proper documentation. Everybody's jumped into it now. So like, everybody wants to be PPO fee for service. Ironically enough, Medicare is run by the PPO companies, United Healthcare, Humana. You have a couple of stragglers like Liberty, and obviously in different states it's a little different. But these plans pay the exact same fees as the PPO plans, right? And on top of that, they're paying 100%. So you're not having to sell anybody anything. You're not having to talk somebody into doing a crown, and they're like, hey man, I can't afford that 50% copay. Where people drop the ball on that, though, is not understanding the insurance and the coverages. Like, they pay for this year, they paid for implants, they pay for bridges, they pay for partials. I mean, they pay for the bread and butter dentistry that people want to do, right? People complain about doing fillings, people complain about doing extractions all day. It's like, now you can do an extraction in the bridge without having to sell something. A lot of practices that only take fee for service and PPO, you'll notice they'll do pretty much emergency procedures. They're doing maybe just one extraction. They're doing a filling because somebody chipped their tooth. They might do a root canal and crown because the person's in pain. When you have Medicare, that doesn't exist. You're doing full dentures. You're doing bridges. You're doing implants. You're doing all that with little to no out-of-pocket expense. I am a firm believer of not upcharging people. It's made me very successful in regards to making offices profitable. And I learned that working in corporate. I realized where corporate dropped the ball, and I'm like, I will never make that mistake. Like, they're idiots. They're making a mistake. And they did it with cleanings, for example, SRPs. They would charge people aura kicks. They would charge people Arrestin. And, the insurance is paying $800 for a cleaning. And it's like, you're about to lose $800. And see me, if I'm the COO, you're getting fired right then and there if you let $800 for a cleaning walk out the door. The same thing with the bridge. Oh, the person can't pay for a buildup. So comp the buildup. What's it cost us to do? It takes me 2 seconds to do a buildup. And if you utilize the insurance that way, you can be very successful. These plans, I have a plan today, $6,000, Humana. That's for most people, that one patient would make their entire day. Like, they'd be extremely excited that they just did $6,000, because in the real world, people are doing $1,500, $2,000 a day. You have one patient walk in, utilize the insurance, and the patient, this is the kicker. The patient walks out very, very happy, and they go tell their aunt or their uncle or somebody in their family, hey man, you got to go to these guys. They just did this beautiful bridge on me. I had to pay nothing for this. And then next thing you know, you're just being flooded by patients. I don't, there's a really big misconception with Medicare. Now, with that being said, I'm okay with that. I'll take all the Medicare patients I can see. I don't want everybody in the world to be Medicare practices. And also in the long run, like I said, they're going to pay no matter what, whether there's a recession, if somebody loses their job, they no longer can pay you, right? The Medicare patients, they're going to be there no matter what. You're going to get those people no matter what.
Marvin, how is Medicaid different from insurance? So when somebody says, I'm going to leave insurance, so they can't accept Medicaid anymore? Like, what? Help me unpack
No,
this.
Medicaid, you can. So like, Medicare is kind of more like, you have to, you apply for it, you sign up for it. Medicaid is a different beast. Medicaid is for people that need help, that aren't working, or, their job doesn't pay them enough. Medicaid has a bad rap because the fees, right? The government doesn't pay as much for those patients. Although even with that being said, in my two various locations that did $5.5 million, we saw Medicaid. They're great filler patients. Those patients need help too. Like I am a big person of helping people. I love helping people within a means, right? Like I'm not going to have my doctor doing $30 extractions. That's just not going to happen. But if somebody comes in and they need, extractions, partials, I'm not against doing those things. And they're good fillers. They're good for hygiene. And at least you get them pointed in the right direction. But that Medicaid, you just apply for, you have to do your Medicaid state ID. You go through the state first, and then you send that paperwork to the third party. So like right now in Florida, I think they're dropping all these other Medicaid companies. I think it's only going to be two, what I call third party Medicaid or supplemental Medicaid, because you have your state Medicaid and then you have the supplemental plans like Liberty, MCNA, DentaQuest, those companies. The state's dropping a lot of those people. So I think it's going to be just two people that are doing that. And yeah, you just sign up for like anything else. It takes usually if you do everything correctly, within 30 to 45 days, you get approved because there's such a shortage of Medicaid doctors.
And Marvin, correct me if I'm wrong too, but like my understanding is that with Medicaid, to be successful with Medicaid, you need an efficient doctor, right? Because it's volume, right?
100%.
Pumping in people. Whereas the difference with like, let's say you have a PPO office, it's not so much about efficiency. I mean, obviously efficiency is always important, but it's also more about like diagnosing. How are you diagnosing and how are you building out a plan to where say, listen, there's 7 things I need to get done. We've got a lot of work to do, but I'm going and just like the way you communicate, the way you're presenting the
flow.
Like, if you're not good at that, you're
never be successful.
Medicaid, it's just feast or famine, right? So
and you're working. Exactly. You have to be very efficient, and if you have to, if you're working on kids, you have to be real fast with fillings. If you're working on adults, you have to be real good with extractions. And if you know how to do those 2 things, though, even with the office in East Colonial that I said was a horrible purchase. I mean, I still agree it was a horrible purchase, but it was a Medicaid office. We're still doing $10,000 a day, and that was strictly Medicaid. But that doctor, we were seeing about 10 patients a day. We're doing pretty much extractions and crowns on kids, but even then, $10,000. I tell Daniel this all the time. Doctors complain about fees and all that stuff. And I'm like, which is understandable, except for at least we're not outside, working in construction, 102-degree weather. I would be happy making $200 an hour or $300 an hour, right? Like, because that's essentially what an associate takes home, 30%. Let's say they're doing $1,000. It's $300, man. Like, should you really complain about how hard your job is?
And Tiger, something that I think is important too, that Marvin and I have also talked about is if you have an office that is Medicaid, right? And let's say you're doing $10,000 a day, that's fantastic. But it goes back to how you define success, right? Because private equity is never going to come knocking on your door if you're a Medicaid office doing $10,000 a day, right, Marvin? Am I wrong in saying that? I mean, private equity is looking for a fee for service or a PPO office, right? There's a goal of potentially reducing insurance, right, and getting fee for. Whereas if you're a Medicaid office, you're making good money, but so just it kind of depends on because how you define success, and private equity is not going to come to you if that's how.
Private equity is they're looking at something like, oh no, we want to make this much money, do it, but even then, like again. Being that I come from that world and have seen it become very successful, I think a lot of people drop the ball on it. Like a lot of people don't. And again, it's like Daniel said. It's like when Medicaid, you have to be efficient. You have to be well-rounded. You have to be, you have to be comfortable doing extractions. And if you do that quickly and efficiently, you can make a lot of money. The problem is it's not quick and efficient.
That's where, Marvin, I think I will have maybe the other side of the argument is like we're not robots, and I think that's where doctors will say, I'm not making enough money. First of all, you have an Instagram that shows you all the beautiful cosmetic work that your friends are doing. And it's always perfect from day one. They've done it great. Like that veneer fits perfectly, right? And then they're going back to their practice saying, well, I got to see 300 patients to make this $300 an hour today.
For sure.
And I have to stay efficient. And I'm also young, or I'm also going to start a family, and I have $500,000 loan. So like to get to that $400,000 a year associate, it takes a while, right? Or it takes some time to get there. So I can see where people get burned with Medicaid, and then they call it a mill, right? Like they don't want to go back there. And that's where I see them complaining, and I kind of don't blame them.
Yeah.
No, I agree 100%. I'm talking about the guy who starts a practice and owns it. As an associate, it would suck to do Medicaid. I 100% agree. but it is also a good filler. Like, like and Medicare. Now, Medicare and Medicaid and Medicare are two different things. And I think that's another common misconception. I would
Okay.
hate to have a practice that's just strictly Medicaid, because it's very difficult to become profitable. Now, if it's your office, if I was a dentist, and I wouldn't mind. I'd be like, you know what? If Medicaid's what I can see right now until I start building up, I'm signing up for the Medicaid. And if I could do $10,000 a day and I'm bringing home 50% of that, that's $5,000 a day, I don't feel bad for myself. I wouldn't feel bad for anybody who made that kind of money, Then again, I'm also not a dentist. I didn't go to school for 8 years. Now, Medicare, though, there's no reason why people would complain about Medicare fees, because they're the exact same fees as the PPOs. And everybody wants the PPO fee for service, right? I think a lot of people, again, they confuse those two, and once they see Medicare, they don't even look at the fees. They see Medicare, they're like, oh, the fees are shit. No, the fees are not shit. Have you actually looked at the fees? It's United Healthcare fees. Have you actually looked at the fees? It's Humana fees. They're no different at all. And I think that's where people, and that happens a lot with associates, like, because the owners usually understand that. The associates don't. They see Medicare. They don't even know how to look at the fee. They just want to come in, do the work, and get out. Right. That's what they're trying to do, which is fine. So I like I said, I have a patient today, $6,000. We're doing one extraction in a bridge. It's $3,200. It's going to take him an hour and a half.
That's pretty cool.
To make 30% of $3,200. So do I feel bad? No, not at all. And not
that will make your associate happy too.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly. And not dealing with me and Daniel have to deal with too, because it's like, dude, you got to understand, like, they're not dealing, like you said, they're not putting in fee schedules. They're not worrying about credentialing. They're not worrying about their staff complaining and saying that this is wrong and so-and-so is being mean to them. Like, they just come in, they do their work, and they get out,
Yeah.
I think that a McDonald's employee sometimes probably should make more money than some of us, because they work a lot harder than us.
Yeah. Well, guys, on this note, let's wrap it up. I'm grateful for your time. This has been a fun hour. It flew by really fast. And I have a lot of takeaways. So I don't think we have to wait 5 years to do another one, like to see where all of us are at.
Yeah.
So maybe we should do one next year to see what the progress is, at least on the third one.
Oh, for sure.
Love that.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. At the end of this thing, like, keep it on. So I'm going to end the session. So keep it on, because it's going to upload the podcast. But
Perfect.
Thank you guys so much, and look forward to having you again. Yeah.
Right,
thank you.
Man, thank you.
Take care.